Ciao everyone, my name's OJ Borg and welcome to La Course on Tête alongside Peloton for our coverage of the 104th Giro d'Italia. As always, hello to our Aérogramme subscribers and thanks to our presenting sponsor, the kings of the Super Shock, Specialized, whose bikes you can find right now at specialized.com or your local Specialized retailer. After 10 tapa, which I'm reliably told is Italian for stage and not Spanish for little bowl of food, the Corsa Rosa is brewing up very nicely. Meanwhile, in Britain, where most of us are, well, 50% of us are, Britain's pubs are open again and hugging is legal. So beer goggles are donned and it's a great chance for us to capture the barfly atmosphere that characterises all the most cliched podcasting. Isn't that right, lads? Lads. But in fact, we can't. We're all strictly virtual as I'm in Manchester.
Jeremy Whittle here. I'm in Sussex still.
Peter Cossins, I'm in France.
Amy Jones, I'm in Spain.
Still, cheers, mine's a pint and cyber high fives all round. It has been an enthralling Giro so far. Let us start with our favourite moments over the first week and a day. Amy, what have you loved or hated or shed salty tears over?
It's got to be Taco van der Hoorn winning the stage. That's one of the highlights for me. Salty tears, not so much, not that far, but it was a sad moment to see Landa crash out as well.
Oh, well, more about that later on. But let's talk about Taco van der Hoorn. I agree with you. For me, it's probably been my highlight of the Giro today. Not for his win, not for what it meant to the team, but for the moment when he turns round, sees no one behind him, and he puts his hand to his mouth. And if you've seen that in replay, it's one of the best cycling pictures I think I've ever seen. I want it on my wall, large.
It's funny, isn't it? Because he looks like a little schoolboy who's got away with stealing a chocolate bar or something. You know, the look of shock on his face. But he must have known already, I suppose, that once he got over that little rise up towards the finish line, it was a done deal.
I know, but he hadn't been caught before in another stage? Was that him that he'd almost got away before?
No, that was Gino Madère.
Or was that Gino Madère? Yeah. I also quite liked when the cameras were on him after he'd finished and, you know, teammates new and old were coming up and congratulated him. He grabs both hands together, and we'll have to use a beep here, but he grabs both hands together and just goes, which I just thought was encapsulated the moment, almost even better than the hand to the mouth, eh, Pete?
Indeed, yeah. It's funny. I would have picked that moment as well. I mean, I guess it's just the brilliance of the moment. I mean, it was a brilliant ride, but like Jeremy said, he was like a kid stealing the sweets or something and getting away with it. And just to see the way that he responded to the victory, and also the fact that, I mean, he rode for Jumbo Visma, or I think they were actually Lotto Jumbo at the point when he was riding for them, and got dropped, and he kind of was in the wilderness for a bit. And he got picked up by Intermarché, who are World Tour team, but they've just won nothing at all. And for it all to come together for him and his team on that one day was absolutely fantastic.
I was just saying that it's extraordinary. He didn't have a contract in December, which is really late, and then they picked him up, and that's their first stage win as well in a Grand Tour.
Jeremy, what's been your moment so far?
Well, Taco rang my bell also.
Is that it?
but I think, you know, there's only one moment that really not spots everything else, which is, I think, Egan Bernal's win at Campo Felice, which, whilst it wasn't unexpected, I guess, given the form that he's shown and given how important that stage finish may well be when we look back at the whole of the Giro, it was still a kind of a redemption of sorts for him because of everything he's been through with his back injury, the humiliation he suffered at last year's Tour de France, and the fact that people started to think, was he a one-hit wonder? Which is incredible when you look back at what people thought about him 2 years ago, that he would ever be thought of in those circumstances. So it was good to see the confirmation of his talent, that, you know, 2019 wasn't a blip, and that he will go on to be a great rider, I think. The challenge now is whether he can sustain this form for the rest of the Giro. So that was the defining moment so far for me.
Well, it's interesting you talk about Egan Bernal there. Let's talk about him, because if we look at the top five of the Giro after stage 10. I mean, we're very time agnostic as we record this podcast, but we are heading in to the first rest day on a Tuesday, which seems strange to me. It's usually a Monday. The top 5, Attila Valter from Groupama FDJ, the former wearer of the pink jersey. Ciccone of Trek Segafredo is in 4th, 37 seconds down. Vlasov of Astana, 22 seconds down. Evenepoel is 14 seconds down in second place. And then, yes, the current wearer of the Maglia Rosa is Egan Bernal of Ineos Grenadiers. This is the moment, actually, from the team car. I think it's always worth and nice to hear this sort of stuff. This is the moment in the team car when he took that win on his way back up the gravel to Campo Felice on Sunday.
Allega, come on, AJ, all full. Ale. After the line, Now this is important, big gap now. Come on, Ega, come on. Stay! Yes! Ega, go on. Ha vinto la tappa, Ega.
And then on Monday, he was sprinting for bonus seconds. Were there signs earlier in the season then that he was coming into form, Pete? Because he looks good right now. This second, he looks good.
Yeah, it's funny. I've in the last few days, I've thought back quite often to the first race of the season he did, which was the Étoile de Bessèges, which I was lucky enough to be able to go to. And it's a lovely little race. I mean, had an absolutely stellar lineup, and Bernal was part of a very stellar Ineos team there. And the third stage was like a very undulating, kind of what they call the Queen stage nowadays. I don't like to use the term, but people know what I mean by that. And I mean, he rode himself into the ground for his teammates that day in the break for Mikhail Kwiatkowski, who actually crashed off on the final descent, so it was kind of wasted in the end. But there were signs then that Bernal was kind of getting back to his best, and although subsequent to that, there have been 1 or 2 signs that maybe his back is still plaguing him. We haven't seen anything like that during the first 10 stages of the Giro. So that looks great for him, and hopefully he'll stay that way.
Yeah, especially not going up such a steep, gravelly climb as well. I mean, I've ridden gravel in my cycling past. If your back hurts, Amy, it's going to show up when you're going up something like that.
Oh, yeah, I can say from experience.
So do we think he's fit? Do we think that he is fighting fit? Is he playing mind games by mentioning it slightly in an interview, saying, "Oh, I don't know how my back is"?
So back in March, I tweeted he was second on Mont Ventoux in the Tour de la Provence. He was second in the Trophy de Guelia, which is a very hilly and very grueling, not really a mountain race, but a kind of hill climb race in the coast of northern Italy. And then he was third in Siena in Strade Bianche. And that was by March the 5th. Now, if that isn't a great string of results that show, you're resilient and you're durable and all of those necessary characteristics, then I don't know what is really. I mean, okay, there's not a win in there, but it's still a pretty good run of form. And I think I was just reading an interview in Pro Cycling magazine, actually, before we started to chat, and in that the way he's talking about his back, it sounds more like he's learned to manage the pain, or not to manage the pain, but to, they've instigated such a heavy program of physiotherapy and whatever other treatments he's having to ensure that it's managed. But then again, there's only so much that can do. So you'd think that 3 weeks in the pink, the next 2 weeks leading the Giro, if he retains the pink jersey, will be a really thorough test.
I mean, if any team can do it, the Ineos Grenadiers can do it, because it's the way they ride, isn't it? They ride very much in that style, Pete. Can he hold it for 2 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, they showed last year that, they didn't take the jersey with Teo until quite late on in the race, but once they had it, I mean, they were in complete control of that race. And, they've got so much experience. They've got a lot of very, very strong guys. I mean, obviously we've seen Filippo Ganna win the time trial already. Gianni Moscon looks extremely strong again. And Jonathan Castroviejo he rode like a storming race with a flat tyre up a mountain the other day, leading the whole bunch behind him. So, I mean, they're obviously all in form, his teammates. So if Bernal's back is good and it holds out, he's obviously the favourite.
This is the thing. I'm not going to put my name to it because I feel I'd get criticised for doing it. So I'm going to put it out there as devil's advocate, Derek Evil's advocate, because when he won his Tour de France in 2019, there was a school of thought that said, look, he wasn't lucky, but it was a moment in time. And a lot of people, don't get me wrong, I do this myself, jumped on the bandwagon saying he's going to win 5, 6 Tour de France. He's going to be the most dominant rider of his generation, which is fine. Here at the Giro, so far, he's looked good, really, dynamic and better than everyone else for a couple of minutes at the end of one stage. Are we jumping again on the bandwagon here?
I don't think so, no, because I think you can see the foundations are there for a really, at least a top 3 finish, if not better. And if you look, as I say, if you look at those results earlier in the season and you look at the quality of the team around him, who clearly have massive belief in his abilities as well. And you look at the rivals as well, and you look at that list of riders in the top 10, and you think, well, who's likely to really reverse this situation now? Who's really got the ability to turn things around? Okay, Remco Evenepoel, but he's an unknown quantity at this stage. Hugh Carthy, maybe, if he puts in a really big spectacular performance like he can do, and like he did in the Vuelta last year. And then you come down to Simon Yates, who's in 9th now and nearly a minute behind. But then beyond that, I don't see anyone there who can really overturn things.
It's interesting that Jeremy's sort of read out the other names there, and I was chatting with somebody earlier today about Simon Yates, and of course, he was phenomenal at the Tour of the Alps just before the Giro, and he kind of came in here as the favourite, and we've seen nothing on him. He's barely been at the front. He's kind of struggled to follow all of his rivals when the GC battle has hotted up. And I've seen 1 or 2 people writing him off and saying, well, he's peaked too soon. And I'm not convinced by that at all. I think the opposite. I think he's thinking back to 2018, where he rode 2 storming weeks, winning 3 stages the first 2 weeks, and then it started to unravel a bit. And Chris Froome kind of not exactly came from nowhere, but he came from an awful long way back in the last 3 or 4 days of the race and won it. And I just think Yates is biding his time. I mean, the race really hasn't really started yet. I mean, we've not seen a big finish.
It's not, no, but to be a minute down at this point, it's not the perfect place to be. Can I just be devil's advocate again and just say, was he really that good at the Tour of the Alps? He had that great stage where he blew everyone away and left them all trailing in his wake, and then he stayed with everyone. Was he as dominant as everyone gave him credit for?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. The devil says fine.
I think the other thing is you need to think back to when he won the Vuelta and the level of performance that he put in there. And the 2018 Giro was really embarrassing and humiliating in the sense that he just did fall away completely off a cliff, really. I mean, it wasn't even close by the end of the race. Didn't even get a podium finish or a top 10 finish. So that was a real humiliation, and I think they're really managing him now. I'd be amazed if he isn't in at the death. And also Vlasov, I think, will be up there as well. So, and maybe Ciccone, if Trek Segafredo can decide what they're doing.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we talk about Nibali. He's there, it's his home race. He's going for how many wins if he wins this one of the Giro? Third. Where's he at? Where's Nibali at? Because we talk about the shock. Is he biding his time? Is he looking for a third week coming back and attacking? But he doesn't look brilliant, does he?
Well, no, because he broke his wrist just 3 weeks before the Giro started. So he had an operation, and then he was. Is he still wearing the kind of not splint thing, but the brace on his wrist? Has anyone noticed that?
I think he is, isn't he? Yeah, I think it's kind of it's there for all the way through the race. I mean, the wound's just. The injury's just slowly healing, so he'll keep it on. Right. But I mean, he is getting stronger. But I mean, like OJ suggests, the track are. I wouldn't say they're all over the place, but it's hard to work out what's going on at times. We saw Mollema attacking on the stage last Sunday where Bernal came through at the end and won. And obviously Ciccone was up there as well. And you're kind of thinking, well, they're going for the stage win, they're going for the GC. I mean, fair enough, but at the moment you wonder whether the tactics are the right tactics.
Well, they're either playing a fantastic hand of bluff, aren't they? In which Nibali is just kind of they're waiting for the last week, and they think his form's going to get better, and they're going to unleash him in the last week in his favourite mountains, his favourite terrain, which the last week is packed with, and see if he can stay at 2 minutes. Then if he comes to great form, but the other argument would be, well, he's too old now, and he's kind of past those days are over. And then the other argument would be, well, they've got a guy who is like potentially the new Nibali, Ciccone, who's in fourth, half a minute down. They should all get behind him. Because there's only two teams really right behind their leaders at the moment, which is the Grenadiers, the English Grenadiers, and the Koenig Quick-Step behind Evenepoel.
And it's showing because they're sitting in the top two spaces. Let's have a look at Hugh Carthy then for EF Education Nippo. 45 seconds down. Now, he was my tip for this race. He had a bit of a moment where he had a seat break on him and he sat up, Pete. And I watched this. I didn't totally know what was happening. He looked like at one moment he was going to be 3 minutes down. He threw himself on the mercy of the commissaires. It was a silly move to do. Why didn't he just ride on to the end?
AJ, I completely missed that. When did that happen?
He did. It was the uphill finish. I think it was stage maybe 6 or 7. It was the sprint in, and his seat snapped.
It was the stage that Calabuan won.
Yeah, it was the stage that Calabuan. And his seat snapped, and he sat up, as you would do, because you've got no seat. Now, realistically, he probably would have been out the saddle anyway. But because he rode in slowly, I was trying to work.
Yeah, but they were inside the final 3K.
Yeah, they were inside the final 3K, but people were debating whether it was truly mechanical or not. Does a broken seat go down as a mechanical? So it was a silly move for him. Well, Pete, Jeremy, you saw this. It was a silly move. Should he have just ridden on? Because he could have blown his entire Giro just there.
Yeah, but he wouldn't because he gets the same time as the front group.
But as long as the commissaires agreed that it was mechanical.
Would a broken saddle not be a mechanical?
Apparently not. Apparently, in some races, I heard, I can't remember who it was. I was listening to Daniel, someone or other, who was talking about it and saying he'd had it in a race where they ruled that it wasn't a mechanical. It doesn't go down as a mechanical.
Well, you can't really ride a bike without a saddle, can you?
When does a broken saddle become a snap seat post?
Well,
or vice versa? If your seat post snaps and you actually lose your saddle, then that's definitely mechanical, surely.
But if your saddle breaks and you can still sit on it slightly in the final 3, well, whatever. How's he looking? As we don't totally know. We know he got given the same time as the rest of the pack. How's he looking then, Pete? Because I think he's looking good and he's in a decent position.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Simon Yates, we've not really seen too much of him yet. He's sort of he stands out because he's so tall, and the EF kit stands out anyway. I mean, it's hard to miss. So he's much more to the fore than Simon Yates is, but they're kind of riding a similar race to each other, not committing themselves too much yet. I mean, he has been more aggressive than Yates and kind of finished closer to the front guys when he's needed to. But I think, like Yates, he's just being canny. He's just biding his time because, I mean, we keep saying, I mean, it's the rest day now, but we're looking ahead. Stage 11 is the next one over the white roads.
Who still has a ringtone on their phone? What is this 2008?
Sorry, my phone. That's my phone's going.
Is that a landline?
He still has a landline.
What? Hang on. Was it your mobile phone or was it a landline?
I don't know.
How does he know he hasn't answered?
Who has a landline? What is this? 2004?
Yeah, exactly. Well, in the Pyrenees, though, I suppose it's understandable, isn't it?
Put that in a museum.
Was it Hugh Carthy who was calling you to tell you that he's biding his time and he's ready to go?
might have been, yeah.
You can call me. I love Hugh Carthy. I think he's great.
I do. What do you think then, Amy? What do you think about Hugh Carthy? Because he was my tip for winning this Giro. And I thought I had doomed him as soon as his saddle broke and he dropped those 3 minutes. Do you think he's got a chance? Do you think he's riding himself into a chance of actually striking out for the win?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, he's riding really consistently and quietly. I mean, not seeing a rider is often a good sign, right? I think it's all down to how he TTs, which I think he did pretty well when he came third in the Vuelta. So yeah, I think he's in with a chance. I just really like him as a character. I loved the stage when Joe Dombrowski won, I think it was, and you could see him, he's riding through and Carthy comes up to him and he's just got like a mouthful of something, and he's just like, oh yeah, well done. I mean, this is a podcast, I can't really say, but he's just so like, he's just a character. I really like him.
He is. He's a massive character. He's great. Well, maybe then just a quick word about Evenepoel, because it's his first race back for however long. He's been out for ages. He's come back in and he's looking good. Second place, 14 seconds off Egan Bernal. Pete, how good is he looking? I mean, does he have it in him? No one really knows how well he's going to go. He's so young and he's not raced for so long.
I don't think even he knows how it's going to go. I mean, he's not raced for, it's like since the Tour of Lombardy last year, which must be, well, perhaps 8 months now. And it's like kind of unusual that he's not tested himself at all in a race before the Giro. I mean, almost unheard of, really. And but he's done extremely well. I mean, I think he was expecting to take the Maglia Rosa on Sunday when Bernal won. He kind of talking that morning, he said it's kind of a battle between me and Egan for the jersey, and we're pretty confident. And his team have ridden really, really well. He's had James Knox up there, Peter Seri, he's got João Almeida riding for him now. I mean, they're extremely strong. Fausto Masnado, I should also mention. And so there aren't any weak links, which often you'd expect in a De Koning Grand Tour team. You'd expect them to be riding for stages and not really focused on the GC. But they're all very much behind Evenepoel, and I guess it's just a case of whether he can keep things together. And I mean, we've seen already that he's an extraordinary athlete. Even at the age of 19, 20, he was winning extremely big races. So it's not beyond him at all. He could win the race.
Does anyone care? Does anyone care about podiums, do you think? I mean, I know you guys always, when we've talked about it, go, oh, you know, maybe they get a second, maybe we get a third. In the world we live in 2021, do you think there's any real value in a second or a third?
Well, there is for the rider and there is for his team.
Is there for the wider cycling audience?
For sports fans generally, I guess not particularly, but I think, you know, given the complex and kind of the labyrinthine nature of cycling, to be able to say I was the king of the mountains, or I was the Ciclamino or the green jersey, or I finished third, I mean, overall in the Giro, I think that's quite a big achievement. That's a big thing, you know. But it's a massive thing, but we live in a very fast-moving, information-dense world. Does it really cut through a second or a third? Maybe
not so much in the binary world of Twitter and right and wrong and win and lose.
So do you think, I mean, the point I'm trying to get to here is, do you think no one really cares about, you know, if you're riding, you think, oh, hang on a second here, if I maybe back off on this stage, I can definitely take a second or a third overall. When if I go for it and I roll the dice, maybe I'll blow up and I won't end up on the podium, but I could win the Giro. Do you think then, Amy, there'll be more of that thinking as we get deeper into this race?
I mean, if you're throwing the kitchen sink at the race anyway to go for the win, then losing a podium to try and go for the win is you're probably going to do that rather than go, oh, I'll conserve myself for a third place. I think, I mean, I don't know, maybe it means more to some than others.
I think it's interesting the way that the dynamic has changed in stage racing in recent years, and we've seen this in the classics as well, the fact that people are willing to risk everything to get a win. And there's definitely a change in dynamic in racing at the moment. It's much more exciting. But I think when we get to the third week, there will be riders who are in the top 10. I mean, not necessarily the riders who are in the top 10 now, but there will be riders in the top 10 who will think, right, I've got my 6th place, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm happy with that. And the team, whoever their team will ride to defend that 6th place, because that's what teams do. They kind of stick with what they've got rather than kind of blowing it all on something. But there will be, at the same time, there will be riders, and I would see Evenepoel as one of these riders, Bernal as one of these riders, who all they're interested in is the win. And maybe Simon Yates is one of those riders as well. If they don't get the win, then they've not achieved what they wanted, and 2nd or 3rd place is, I mean, it's good, but it's not what they're after.
Unless you're Movistar, of course, in which case you target the team's classification every race you go to.
Now, every podcast we're going to be hearing from legendary Italian sports writer Marco Pastonesi. And let's do that right now. Here he is with his latest sketch from Il Giro.
Egan from Colombia and Remco from Belgium. Egan from Bogota, big city, 9 million people and 2,640 meters of altitude. And Remco from Skepdal, small village, 10,000 people and 40 meters, just nothing, upon the sea. Egan, who was born, or better, reborn in Italy, in an Italian team, with an Italian coach, in the Italian culture, and Remco, who was going to die in Italy. Giro di Lombardia last year, his dive from the road into nothing. Some moments of panic, the god of cycling saved him. Egan, fallen in love with the bike in a country where the bike means freedom, and Remco, fallen in love with football, Anderlecht, PSV Eindhoven, Anderlecht again, and the young national team. Then the turning point, bicycle, cycling, not only freedom but even loneliness, being responsible, the only one, of his win or lose. Egan the predestined and Remco the converted. Egan the green pearl and Remco the all the way. Egan already winner of a Tour de France, and Remco who has no border because nobody knows where there are, if there are, his borders. Egan and Remco, what a show, what a story, what a tale, what a Giro d'Italia.
Marco Pastonesi there with his sketch from Il Giro. Now, let's take a look at what is coming up on the Giro over the next week after this rest day. The race enters a new phase on Wednesday with more gravel roads and what some are calling the Strada Bianchi stage, which I'm very excited about. For me, it was the greatest one-day race of this year and usually is. And there's more climbing looming on the horizon. So what can we expect? Pete, what can we expect from the Strada Bianchi stage? Excitement, gravel, punctures.
Well, the one thing that we might be able to expect is rain, because I checked the forecast out this evening for Montalcino, where the stage finishes, and Wednesday is the only day this week where there's rain forecast for that area of Italy. And of course, if you think back to 2010, the last time they raced on the Strade Bianchi, had this epic stage that Cadel Evans won in, I mean, just phenomenal style, came in looking like a mudman, basically. And we might see a rerun of that. And it's worth pointing out that they're actually racing, I think, twice as far on the white roads as they did back in 2010. So it could be quite a grueling test.
Which is exciting. And we've seen a ton of grueling weather already in this Giro. There's been very much having to be belligerent to get through the stages. Amy, you've seen these stages. Do you think with the wetness that comes down, if it is bad weather on the Strada Bianchi stage, do you think it will change things massively overall? Can you see Bernal being able to get through that?
I think Bernal proved that the weather doesn't really faze him when he was attacking on, I think it was stage 5 or 6, I can't quite remember. But and he's already proven himself on Strada Bianchi, coming third. So I don't think Bernal necessarily, but I think definitely the weather might wreak havoc for other riders, especially in terms of mechanicals. If the cars are really far back, I think that'll be an issue for some people.
It's definitely going to be, if it rains, as Pete is predicting, and we know that Pete's predictions are normally pretty accurate. Anyway, but no,
we'll come to Mikel Landa later.
So I don't know if it rains, then it's going to be carnage, I'd have thought, because as you say, service will be very slow to get there, visibility will be poor, all of those kind of things. You know, the roads will be churned up even more than usual, because, and especially the bunch gets split up, and then you get cars between groups of riders and TV motorbikes and other motorbikes as well, photographers' bikes. So it could be really, really messy. And I mean, it's conceivable, isn't it? You could see bigger gaps on a stage like that than in the high mountains.
Is it like an Italian Paris-Roubaix? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, effectively, yeah.
Wow. I love that. And then looming on the horizon, quite literally, is the mighty Zoncolan stage, which is next Saturday. And the thing is, though, if you want to make a bike race entertaining, put a zonk on it. So here to tell us all about this fearsome and much feared climb is William Fotheringham.
Time to unlock my inner Luddite and let it roam wild and free. I'm going to come clean. I don't like the 21st century cycling trend for climbs that are so steep you wouldn't want to walk up them, let alone ride a bike up them. I'm not keen on the fact that since the introduction of the Alto del Angliru into the Vuelta in 1999, race organisers feel they have to seek out ever wilder and woollier ascents, steeper and steeper and steeper, for longer and longer and longer. There's a kind of competitive machismo to it. Look at our race. We've got a 25% climb that lasts 6 kilometres. Look at ours. We've got 27% for 7 kilometres. Monte Zoncolan, which the Giro d'Italia will go up on Saturday, in what should be one of the high points of the race, sums this trend up for me. It's insane. This year, the riders are going up what I'm told is the easier side. This has a maximum gradient of 23%, while the harder side peaks out at 22%. Maths was never my strong suit, but that doesn't sound easier to me. The difference is that Sutrio, the version the riders tackle on Saturday, is longer and it has a false flat in the middle. So it's steeper, but the steep bit isn't as long. Frankly, when you weigh 100 kilos like I do, this kind of detail is academic. Zoncolan has built an interesting history. It begins with one of the best climbers ever to grace the women's peloton, Fabiana Luperini, because this climb was first used by the Giro Rosa in 1997. In a sport where the history has largely been written by men, that's pretty unique. The men's Giro didn't get there for another 6 years, and of course Marco Pantani looms large, as he does everywhere where the Giro goes uphill. Poignantly, the Zoncolan was where he made his last attack. It's good to see that the current best climber in the women's peloton, Annemiek van Vleuten, put her name on it in the Giro Rosa in 2018. But that year, in the men's race, it was memorable too. Chris Froome, doing his praying mantis thing, up and down over the bars to beat Simon Yates. It was the point where we all began thinking, maybe Froome isn't finished just yet. The rest was Grand Tour history. It was a magnificent scene. Crowds perched like gannets on the green slopes. Froome and Yates duking it out on a narrow track, barely above walking pace. The Tifosi going collectively berserk. Whoops. I'm sounding dangerously enthusiastic here, which is precisely the point. The likes of me may disapprove of this kind of gladiatorial spectacle and wistfully long for the classical purity of the Stelvio, but we can't help ourselves. It's kind of like going into a bookshop, planning to buy Tolstoy and coming out with Stephen King. Or thinking, I'm going to listen to Tchaikovsky today, and finding that actually there's a bit of heavy metal that you really fancy. We love the cheap thrill, so I'll be glued to the box on Saturday while tutting vainly into my tea.
William Fotheringham there with the most interesting review of the Zoncolan I've ever heard, or even any mountain. Now, is all this Giro d'Italia racing just what you needed coming out of lockdown? Well, when you sign up for a race of your own, do it on the new Specialized Tarmac SL7, the winningest bike in the pro peloton. Oh yeah. One bike to rule them all. Learn more at specialized.com or any of your local Specialized retailers. Now, this being the Giro, there's been a ton of controversy. Caleb Ewan won twice and abruptly went home with a sore knee. And it's an interesting talking point, this, Jeremy. It's an interesting talking point. Because I think I'm not a massive fan of this. I'm not a massive fan. If you join a race, you see it through to the end. Turning up, winning a few stages, and then you see the mountains, you think, whoa, I don't fancy that. Plus, the Tour de France isn't too far away. And then you go home. I think it's disrespectful to the race.
Yeah, and I think maybe there's a more tactful way of doing it than the way that Caleb Ewan did it. Because... Which is
what? You signal your behaviour beforehand, say, I'm just going to be there for a week?
No, well, he did do that. But maybe you do something like, you ride on to the rest day at least. You stick it out as far as the rest day. I mean, it felt like he just did ultimately completely what suited him. and didn't think about the feelings of spectators or the race organisers or, you know, the general public at all. And it was just kind of, I'm off now, basically. And I mean, had there been much mention of his sore knee? Had anyone heard that before?
No, nothing at all. But what can you do to stop it? There's nothing you can really do to stop it. You can't take the stages off them. You know, you can't say, well, if you don't make it to the end, you can't cash out.
But well, one of the biggest, you know, heroes of Italian cycling of the past who did this on a regular basis was Mario Cipollini, who always with a kind of dismissive laugh would say, you know, I'm off to the beach now to top up my suntan. And he did that during the Giro, and he did it during the Tour and during the Vuelta as well. And did he ever finish a Grand Tour, Pete?
He did. He finished the Giro at least once. I remember I can't remember who it was. Who was one of his teammates won the Maglia Rosa that year. I can't remember whether it was Garzelli or I think it might have been Garzelli. And he rode in support of him then. Can I just say about Ewan though? I don't think this is an issue at all. I don't understand why everybody's getting upset about this. He was he won one day, and then the next day he was dropped. He was struggling. I mean, initially they said he'd crashed or whatever. Then this story came out about him having a knee injury. As I understand it, his knee is extremely swollen, and he was struggling with it. I mean, it could have been something. He might have just banged his knee on the bars or something that morning. We don't really know. But I mean, Ewan, I think, is a pretty straight up guy. I mean, he's somebody I always really like talking to. He's always very good with the press and expresses himself really well. And I don't think he's done anything wrong at all. I mean, maybe it's not been handled too well, but I don't even think that. But I mean, there's been a furore with Eddie Merckx saying that Ewan's shown disrespect to the race, and I think everybody's just getting a bit under the collar about an issue that isn't an issue.
The thing I liked about that was the fact that Axel Merckx backed his dad up and chimed as well. So, yeah, Dad's right. But then, I mean...
tell him, Dad.
That's right, Dad. You tell him. You tell him, son. And I think the other thing about it is that, you know, it's not just Kelly Bune who's done this. It's been done for a long time now, hasn't it? Sprinters pulling out of races once the going gets tough, uphill primarily. But to me, it's a bit like if you're playing the last round of the Masters and you said, oh, I don't want to play aim in the corner, I'll just pick it up at the 13th, the 12th. Oh, you can't do that, you know. And I think increasingly... it's just that sports business thing creeping in for, you know, the Kelly Bune brand. It's better if he drops out of the Giro now and gets ready for the Tour, where his brand will be big in Australia, and then goes on to the Vuelta. And, you know, what's he going to do at the Tour? Presumably he's not thinking of Paris, or maybe he is because of the Champs-Élysées, but is he going to get halfway through the Tour and think, oh, I'm going to stop now because of the Vuelta? I just think it's not a great trend. It's not a good look.
No, well, I don't think Ewan's the kind of guy who would do something like that. I honestly don't. I think it's kind of he's been misjudged. I mean, I'm sure that he was going to pull out. He said he was going to pull out. But I'm pretty sure he would have gone. I'm pretty sure he would have gone to the rest day, or he would have gone maybe a couple of days beyond the rest day.
But I guess the point is then, Pete, I would take Caleb Ewan out of this then. Let's talk more generally about sprinters turning up, racing a few stages, then leaving a week, 2 weeks into a Grand Tour. Do you think that's okay?
Well, I just think, you know, like, not just Ewan, but any sprinter, is it not better, not just for their personal brand, but their team as well, for them to come in? He's won 2 stages in Ewan's case, and what he's going to do is just slog his way around the mountains and the Gruppetto. Like, does it look better, or is it better for the team for him to win stages at the Giro and the Tour and the Vuelta, or is it better for him to finish the Giro, haul his way up the Zoncolan, be knackered for the Tour or subsequent races? I don't really see the issue.
I think the other thing about it is that I'm old school.
No.
Unashamedly.
What?
Yes.
I didn't think we'd have breaking news on this podcast. I did not think we'd do it.
I know this may be a shock to you, but as I sit here in my top hat and my tweed coat, wearing a cravat, I can say that. I don't know. I think it is kind of disrespectful, because I do think you should continue until you can't. Now, I don't know the details of his knee injury. I wasn't aware that he had a knee injury until suddenly it was presented as an excuse for stopping, but or was there a reason for stopping rather? But I kind of do think that, you know, the people who've inspired me are the riders that you see, you know, they ride on until they're in tears basically, and they can't continue. And I'm not saying, you know, they have lost a limb or or whatever. But, there's that thing of honouring the race and the tradition of the race. And also, what about his teammates? Because his teammates have busted gut to get into the stage wins, and now they've got to carry on for the sponsor and suffer through the Zoncolan and every other mountain stage, and they'll just finish 96.
No, I don't see it like that. I mean, I think Ewan's gone, and you've got someone like Thomas again. He'd be rubbing his hands with glee now, thinking, I've got an open run at every stage. I can take my pick of whatever I want. I don't have to set the pace on the front of the bunch for Caleb now. I can go out and do my own thing.
Well, let's end then on where our podium predictions have got to, because if you listened to our last podcast, which of course you didn't, if you didn't, please do, and subscribe and leave us a message. Here's who suggested what. Amy and Jeremy Whittle, and I'm only going for the first position here. To hell with the rest of your podium picks. You both said Simon Yates. How is your Yates pick doing then, Jeremy and Amy? Still confident, Amy?
I'd forgotten I'd said that. I thought I'd said Bernal. I'm not just saying that.
Oh, did you? Okay. Do you want to switch now without going back? I can't check. I'd written down Simon Yates in front of me.
No, I'm sure I probably did. But I thought I'd said Bernal because I was feeling quite smug that I'd picked someone who was maybe the basic choice, but now he's doing well. But I'll stick with Yates.
Well, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, you can have Bernal. For the sake of difference, you can have Bernal. And also, I actually can't remember without going back and checking.
Hang on. No, you can't just change.
She can. She's having Bernal. She's getting Bernal. Mine of Hugh Carthy, I think, is looking good. I think when he gets to the Zoncolan, he's going to have something that he's not told anyone. And then that brings us to just one last prediction. One by, yes, the smuggest man, who on our group WhatsApp was dropping all sorts of Lander-based chat. And then something happened. So, to the soundtrack of Bird's Lament from Moondog, it is time for Lander's Lament.
Yeah, I picked Mikel Lander, and of course he's out of the race. In typical Lander fashion, awful luck, riding safely in his well, both, but mainly his, riding into the finish safely in the bunch. And he got struck by a cartwheeling Joe Dombrowski the day after the American had won his stage. Dombrowski clipped a marshal who was standing on a traffic island in the middle of the road. Dombrowski didn't see him, clipped him, went flying across into the bunch and took out Lander race over. I mean, it kind of reminded me of the incident when he was riding with Sky and Geraint Thomas, or I think it was actually Wilco Kelderman, clipped a motorbike, a race motorbike that had been parked at the side of the road in a pretty awful position. Kelderman clipped it. He fell into Thomas. He fell into Lander, and both of the Sky riders, Thomas and Lander, ended up quitting. I mean, it's just one of those things. He seems to get into great shape, and then something always befalls him. He's either the gooseberry in a relationship at a team like Movistar or Astana, where he doesn't fit in, or just horrendous luck, and you just think one day this guy's got to get a good break, but sadly it's not at this Giro.
The Ballad of Mikel, the Gooseberry. And that wraps us up. Thanks to Jeremy, Peter and Amy, and to our sponsors Specialized. Make sure you check out the Roubaix Comp, the Athos, and the winningest bike in the peloton, the Tarmac, at Specialized.com or your local Specialized dealer. It's building up to be an exciting Giro d'Italia. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and for more writing, check out lacourseontete.com. Here's to next time. Paolo, what are we having for tea?
Chips, da-ti-do-di-do, chi-boom, chi-boom-boom, da-ti-do-di-do, chi-boom, chi-boom-boom, da-ti-do-di-do.